Most people say they want to be understood, but if you listen closely, what they really want is to be accepted without having to explain themselves. Because to be truly understood, fully seen for what you feel, what you mean, and what you've been through, means handing someone the sharpest map of your soul and trusting they won't weaponize it. That's not comfort, that's exposure. You've probably felt it before. Someone looks at you a second too long, asks the question that cuts too deep, and suddenly your chest tightens. You change the subject, you laugh, you pull back. It's not that you don't want to connect, it's that connection feels dangerous when it can lead to dissection. If you've ever felt safer being half-known, it's because at some point, being fully known didn't feel safe. The fear of being understood isn't weakness or pride. It's protection built from experience. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps this message reach the people who carry the same quiet fears. This fear usually begins where understanding once led to pain. Maybe as a child, you opened up and were told you were too sensitive. Maybe you shared the truth and were laughed at, dismissed, or ignored. Over time, the mind made a quiet equation. Being seen meant being hurt. So you learned how to stay visible, but unreadable. Psychologists call this self-concealment, the act of hiding distressing parts of yourself to avoid rejection. It's an invisible armor that slowly becomes part of your identity. You start controlling how much of your truth leaves your mouth. Not because you like lying, but because you can't survive being misunderstood again. But here's the paradox. Every time you hide, you reinforce the belief that the real you is unsafe. You feed the same fear you're trying to outrun. That's why people who fear being understood often sound articulate, yet emotionally distant. Their words are precise, but their tone is empty. They talk to protect, not to connect. And this fear doesn't just guard your emotions, it starts shaping your relationships. You attract people who never push too deep. You become drawn to those who misunderstand you, just enough to keep things simple, because real understanding feels too intimate, too unpredictable. It threatens the control you've built around your story. Psychologically, this is called avoidant attachment, when closeness feels like danger, not safety. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between being loved and being analyzed. So you choose distance, because distance feels like peace. But there's a cost to that peace. You start living half-truths, honest enough to pass as open, hidden enough to stay safe. You become the editor of your own life, trimming details so no one can trace the pattern. And soon, you start mistaking loneliness for independence. It's easier to call it solitude than to admit you're scared of being seen. Here's the deeper layer. The fear of being understood isn't just about others. It's about the self. Because if someone else can fully see you, you can too. And that means facing everything you've avoided. Your guilt, your contradictions, your need to be right, your quiet shame. So you keep distance not to protect yourself from others, but from your own reflection. The human brain does this through a defense called cognitive avoidance. It dodges emotional triggers by staying mentally one step removed. You intellectualize your feelings, turn your pain into theories, or talk about your life like it belongs to someone else. It sounds wise, but it's just well-spoken fear. And this is the part that breaks people quietly. You can't be loved for who you are if no one can see who that is. Understanding requires visibility, and visibility requires risk. But that risk isn't as fatal as your body remembers it. Because not everyone will use your truth against you. Not everyone will turn your honesty into leverage. The right people won't just hear your story, they'll hold it. They'll meet your transparency with calm, not control. And that experience begins to rewire the belief that exposure equals harm. You don't overcome the fear of being understood by forcing yourself to confess everything. You heal it by giving understanding a new outcome. Start small. Let someone see one unpolished truth. Notice what happens when they don't run. Each safe moment becomes a counter memory. Proof that being seen doesn't always mean being broken. At its core, this fear is the mind's way of saying, please handle me gently. And healing it means learning to handle yourself that way first. When you understand your own fears without judgment, you stop needing the world to misunderstand you just to feel safe. Because when you finally meet someone who truly sees you and you don't flinch, that's not exposure anymore. That's freedom. If this video gave you clarity, like subscribe and share your thoughts below. Your voice might be the one that helps someone else face what they've been hiding from,